All Jets fans' eyes are on Atlanta tonight. It's Fernando Mendoza versus Dante Moore in the Peach Bowl. Let's talk about what to watch for today on Locked On Jets.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Friday, January 9th, 2026, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you so much for making the show your first listen or first watch every day, and for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. A big shout out to you everydayers, and if you're new to the show, this is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. Our episode today is brought to you by FanDuel. The wild card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. On today's show, we are going to talk about the most important position on the field for the New York Jets, the quarterback position. And there's a lot up in the air as we move into the offseason. We'll look at some of the veteran options that the Jets could have to add to the team in 2026. We'll talk about why the Jets need to clean house at the position, why none of the three quarterbacks on the 2025 roster should return next season. But we will begin by talking about the potential future of the quarterback position for the New York Jets. And it will be on display tonight in Atlanta in the college football playoff semifinal. It's the Peach Bowl. It's Indiana versus Oregon. And whenever you watch one of these college football playoff games, you see a lot of quality prospects. You see a lot of guys who will be drafted in the spring. But for Jets fans, this game is appointment viewing because this game features the consensus top two quarterback prospects in this year's class, Fernando Mendoza with Indiana and Dante Moore of Oregon. And of course, the Jets have a glaring need at the quarterback position, and they own the second overall pick. And on yesterday's show, I laid out my case for why the Jets should consider trading down. But I don't think the Jets are going to follow my advice. So I think that there's a very good chance that the quarterback of the future for the New York Jets is playing tonight in the Peach Bowl. Now, right now, it seems like the consensus is that the Heisman Trophy winner, Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza, is the consensus #1 prospect. He seems very likely to go #1 overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. That leaves Dante Moore as a potential pick for the Jets at 2. Of course, things can change. It would not be unprecedented for a player to rise up the boards between January 9th and draft day. It would not be unprecedented for a player to fall from the #1 spot to a little bit lower in the draft come draft day. And there's still a lot to be determined. We still have 2 college football games left this season. We have the semifinals and the championship game. If Moore outplays Mendoza in this game and leads Oregon to a championship, potentially he could rise. If Mendoza has a rough game tonight in an Indiana loss, he could fall. And that's to say nothing of what's to come, the All-Star games, the combine, the pro days, the in-person visits. There's a lot to be determined yet. But as of right now, it looks like Moore would be the more likely choice for the Jets at second overall. But I think most Jets fans are very interested in this game tonight to see these two guys on the big stage. Now, I'll tell you the absolute worst way you could watch this game, and that's by drawing way too many conclusions into what happens. If one of these guys plays really well and the other plays really poorly, it's going to be natural that people will blow what happened out of proportion. They'll say the guy that played well, he's got to be the #1 pick. And the guy that played poorly, he's a guaranteed bust. And I don't know how many times we need to see that this is not how it actually works in the NFL for us to change the way we view these things. But there are a million stories of guys who played great in these big bowl games and their stock rose and they were declared a can't miss prospect. And they get to the NFL and they're just not that good. I wonder who one of those guys was. It was Justin Fields in the 2021 Sugar Bowl when he was responsible for 6 touchdowns in an Ohio State win over Clemson. A lot of people saw that game and declared that Fields can't miss. Well, Fields obviously did miss. And we could go down the list. I mean, Mark Sanchez in 2009 had a monster Pro Bowl over Penn State, led USC to a blowout victory and looked great in that game. And that was one of the great Rose Bowl performances of all time. A few years later, Sam Darnold played Penn State for USC. He was great in that Rose Bowl, led USC to a win in the shootout. And Sam has eventually developed into a quality NFL quarterback, but that was not a guarantee he would have success with the team who drafted him. You can only read too much into one game. I think there's a real danger in college football to go crazy over one game for a player. And one of the things I always say in scouting is you should never read too much into a player's best game or his worst game. You should evaluate these games as part of a series. You need to evaluate the whole picture. You need to evaluate all of the players' games. Now, can you put a little bit more weight on this one because it's a big game, it's a playoff game, and the opponent's really good? I think that that's fair, but I think it's important to keep these games in perspective. Another thing I would warn you about is, throw out any production that comes on screen passes. An ability to throw a screen pass doesn't really correlate with the ability to run an NFL offense. I'd say the same thing about run pass options, but there are specific things I'm looking for from these players in this game. For Mendoza, I'm interested to see if Oregon can give him a little bit more adversity than Alabama did, because his performance against Alabama in the Rose Bowl, the quarterfinal, was great, but Alabama made it easy on him. I never thought I'd live to see the day where Alabama struggled to compete with Indiana's athletes at the skill positions, but that's what happened in that game. The first time these teams met during the regular season, the game was at Oregon. Oregon's pass rush kind of rattled Mendoza a little bit. And, I think with a lot of these prospects at quarterback, the question is, how do they handle adversity? And specifically with Mendoza, I want to see him be able to navigate a messy pocket. That's not something he's had to do a lot of this season. And I think that that's a critical trait to have in the NFL. Why do a lot of quarterback prospects who look good end up failing? It's because we watched them play from clean pockets nonstop in college. Zach Wilson was an example of this. Zach Wilson had a great offensive line at BYU. And one of the things that scared me about Zach, and look, I can't say that I predicted he'd be a bust of the magnitude he was, but one of the things that did scare me about him was he seemed rattled under pressure. And I think that there were some moments in that first game when Mendoza was a little bit rattled by the Oregon pass rush. So I'm interested to see how he looks from that standpoint. And I'm not super interested on Mendoza's ability to extend plays, because that's very difficult to see. It's difficult to say how well that will translate. Now, to contradict myself, I'm actually very interested to see about Dante Moore's mobility. Moore in the Orange Bowl against Texas Tech wasn't terrible. I mean, he did some good things, but it was clear there were points where the Texas Tech defensive line, which is a very talented defensive line, maybe the best defensive line money could buy in college football, it was clear that they rattled him at some points. And one lingering question I have about Moore is his mobility. He did not look very athletic. He did not look like he really even had the requisite mobility to extend plays. And I'm just interested to see how he'll bounce back in general. It was not a terrible performance, but Oregon won that game because of their defense, or maybe more accurately because Texas Tech's offense was so inept. And I think that that's a really important trait to have as a quarterback prospect, bouncing back after a difficult game, playing a tough opponent. This is about the most ideal matchup you could have as a Jets fan, because you get to watch these two quarterbacks. And of course, they're not actually going head to head. Moore is taking on Indiana's defense. Mendoza is taking on Oregon's defense. But you get to watch the top two quarterback prospects in one game. And again, it's easy to blow what happens out of proportion. These games should only be viewed in the context of one game. Again, put a little extra weight on it because it's the semifinal. Put a little extra weight on it because the opponent is elite. But it's important to keep it in perspective. That said, we're going to see some specific things we can test from these guys. And you should always keep an eye out on how they're handling the NFL concepts. These college offenses don't always have pure NFL reads, but there will be things that translate over and over. So if you hear the announcers talking about that's something he'll do in the NFL, it produces a good play or a bad play. It's something to take note of. A very exciting game for Jets fans tonight in Atlanta. It'll be really intriguing to see who comes out on top. Now, head on the Locked On Jets podcast. We go from these two really good quarterback prospects to talking about the dismal state of the Jets quarterback position in 2025, because the Jets need to figure out what they're doing at the position. And the first place you look at is internally. Well, I don't think the Jets bring back any of their three internal quarterbacks, and we'll discuss why as we continue here on this Friday edition of Locked On Jets. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listen or first watch every day, and for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you have not already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. It includes access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Jets compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app, along with an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat for listeners of this show. Go to lockedonnyjets.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. And today on Locked On Jets, we are focusing on the quarterback position for the New York Jets. The Jets have a lot of work to do, and all eyes will be on Atlanta tonight for the Peach Bowl. It will be Dante Moore against Fernando Mendoza. But the reason the Jets are so interested in quarterback is how little production they got from the position this year. And I think it's fair to say that none of the three quarterbacks on the 2025 roster should return for this team in 2026. Now, we can begin by talking about Justin Fields. And there's no question about it. The Fields signing was a colossal failure for the Jets. I think that in a year where very little went right for Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji, their worst decision in retrospect was bringing in Fields. Look, I have to admit it. Back in March, I felt like it was a calculated gamble worth taking. I was not expecting big things from Fields, but I was expecting better than what we got. This was Fields regressing to his rookie level performance. I mean, his last couple of years in Chicago weren't great, but they were maybe 24th, 25th best quarterback in the league. His year in Pittsburgh, he was the starter the first third of the season, the first half of the season. Again, he wasn't great. The Steelers won some games, though. I mean, he looked like a credible quarterback, at least. This was a total regression by Fields. I mean, I think the disappointing thing is he was never this bad in Chicago. And part of the reason the Bears moved on was they got the Caleb Williams pick, because of the trade they made with the Carolina Panthers a couple of years back. They ended up getting the #1 pick in the draft in the year where Caleb Williams, who was viewed as one of the top prospects of the 21st century, was available to them. So they moved on from Fields. And, I wasn't expecting Fields to be spectacular. I think that one of the biggest disappointments with Fields was how ineffective he was as a runner. And look, I think part of the blame, I'm not saying that it's the coaching staff's fault that Fields failed, but part of the blame, it got to the extent it did, was that I don't think the coaching staff did a very good job in utilizing Fields' ability as a rusher. And if they were going to run this sort of offense, I don't understand why they ever brought Fields in, because it was never a good bet that Fields was going to succeed. But if he was going to succeed, it needed to be an offense that was based on his ability to run. They needed to design scramble drills into his passes. They needed to utilize his ability on design runs. They needed to lean into RPO so he didn't have to make complex reads from the pocket. They needed to utilize the screen game, take advantage of Breece Hall's ability as a receiver, particularly when he didn't have any talent at the receiver position. I mean, entering the year, we knew that the Jets did not have good enough players playing wide receiver for them. And that played itself out because the Jets had no 400-yard receivers this season. Unbelievable. I mean, of course, a huge part of that's Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson easily would have gone over 400 yards, but he was the only good receiver the Jets had entering the season. And by the time he was hurt by the end of the year, they had no good receivers. So, it was a bad fit for a guy who wasn't that great of a player. Now, financially, the Jets have a couple options. Now, they're going to take some dead money because of the contract they gave Fields. The question is whether they want to take it all this year or whether they want to open up a little more cap space for them. If they cut him before June 1st, it's a $22 million dead money hit. Ouch. $22 million for Justin Fields not be on the team. But because Fields' cap number for if he's on the team is $23 million, Jets actually save $1 million. If the Jets make Fields a post-June 1st cut, and that's just a designation you can make a player, his dead money hit goes down to $13 million. So again, if he's on the team, $23 million. The dead money goes down to $13 million if he's a post-June 1st cut. So that means they get $10 million this year. The catch is that the other $10 million, the other $9 million goes on a future year cap hit. So you're adding dead money for Fields to future years if you make him a post-June 1st cut, but you do open up more cap space. But I think it's clear they need to move on from Fields. For Tyrod Taylor, I mean, you have a guy who, by all accounts, is a consummate professional, a guy everybody loves having in the locker room, a guy who was one of the few veterans on the team. He was a good mentor. And as I mentioned on yesterday's show, I don't think the Jets had enough veterans on the team this year. I think that the Jets really leaned into the youth movement as part of the rebuild. And I think in the right dosage, that made sense. But I think they probably took it a little bit too far. I think the team should overwhelmingly have had young players, but I do think you need some veteran stabilizers on the team. Some guys who can go out there and perform and prevent things from falling to the depths they fell to for the Jets this year. I think one of the problems the Jets had was that the veteran guys they had were players like Tyrod, like Josh Reynolds, who may have been good locker room guys, but couldn't really help you on the field. And on yesterday's show, I named some veteran guys I think the Jets should try and bring in. Tyrod's, I think, a mid-tier to low-level backup at this point. Now, he was better than Fields, and he was better than the next guy we're going to talk about, but that's more a commentary on the other options for the Jets. A guy who, for a veteran, I think misses too many reads, and a guy who, more significantly, just can't stay on the field. He's always banged up, and I think part of it's his playing style. I think part of it's he takes too many hits because he holds onto the ball for too long, because when he's running, he doesn't protect himself by sliding. But I think that if we're talking about the Jets drafting a quarterback, Moore or Mendoza, and you want to have a veteran stopgap, there aren't many great options. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but you need somebody who's more reliable, somebody who can stay on the field. You don't want to be in a situation where Tyrod's injured and the rookie gets thrown into the lineup before he's ready. That actually happened with Tyrod at one point in his career when he was with the Chargers. Justin Herbert took over as the starter, and I guess Herbert was ready, but Tyrod got injured and Herbert went into the lineup. I think you want to avoid that. And then the third guy is Brady Cook. And I mean, I think you probably understand why Brady Cook shouldn't come back, but I do think there's a tendency to kind of just dismiss rookie struggles and say, well, he's got more time to get better. The thing about a rookie, though, is you have to show some signs of promise. I don't think Cook did that whatsoever. I mean, the numbers tell the story here. I mean, a 57.5 completion percentage, 4.8 yards per attempt. Now, 4.8, that's under 5 yards per attempt. If you're at 7 yards per attempt, that's a bit too low. That's a little bit below average. He was at 4.8. He wasn't even at 5. Again, if you're at 7, we got some work to do. He was at 4.8. I mean, the numbers are unbelievable. A 55.4 quarterback rating, an 11.6 QBR. QBR is an ESPN stat. They take a scale of 1 to 100. They determine, they actually have the stat win probability added. Each play adds a certain percent, gives you a certain, either increases or decreases your probability of winning the game by a certain percent. And they kind of take that for quarterbacks, each play, and mold it into like a 1 by 100 rating. I mean, a really bad quarterback falls in the 30s. Brady Cook, 11.6. Justin Fields was in the 30s this year. So think about how bad Justin Fields was. Brady Cook's QBR, 11.6. There's just nothing to build on. I mean, where are the physical tools? I mean, I guess he's kind of mobile, but not like Fields level mobility. He doesn't have a great arm. He doesn't have a great sense of passing concepts. I mean, I think that if we're talking about a young third string quarterback, a young developmental guy, you can find somebody better in the late rounds of the draft. And this might be a year where the Jets look to double dip at the quarterback position in the draft. Maybe they draft more second, but you can still draft a developmental guy later on. I think it's good team practice to have a developmental guy on your team. I think it makes sense. I think particularly in the era where you can get 3 quarterbacks up on game day, where you have the ability to activate a bonus player who doesn't count against your allotment of 47, 48. So on game day, you have 53 players on your roster, but you can only 47 to 48 of them are allowed to be activated. And whether it's 47 or 48 depends on how many offensive linemen you have up. But the NFL, the last couple of years, has given teams a bonus spot that doesn't count against the 47 or 48. It's an emergency quarterback. He's essentially a number 3 quarterback. If your starter and backup get hurt, you can go in the game. And teams don't take advantage of it for some reason. It makes sense to have a number 3 quarterback who's a developmental project just for that reason, because you can try to develop him into something going forward. And if something bad happens to your starter and backup, you can put him in. But I think the Jets can do better than Brady Cook. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of great options for the Jets to add in terms of veterans. I had you on the Locked On Jets podcast. We'll take a first look at some of the options the Jets have to add to try and improve their veteran slate of quarterbacks to replace Tyrod Taylor. And I got to warn you, there are not many attractive options. We'll dive into them, though, continuing here on this Friday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by FanDuel. The wild card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bet you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boost you want to apply. The Boost lets you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The Boost give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. Every play feels bigger, and the Boost make your bets feel that way too. You can make your picks, then apply your profit boosts to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Rocket Money. Let's be real, managing your finances can feel overwhelming. Between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all of your money actually goes each month, it's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. The automatic transaction categorization is a game changer. You can finally see exactly where your money's going each month. You can set budgets and goals, get personalized insights, and receive real-time alerts for large transactions, upcoming bills, and low balances. It even consolidates your checking, savings, loans, and investments into a single dashboard so you can get a clear view of your entire financial picture. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. This is the Locked On Jets podcast here on this Friday. We're taking a look at the future of the Jets quarterback position today. The Jets are very likely to draft a quarterback with the second overall pick in the 2026 NFL draft, I think. I think there's a good chance either Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore, who are playing tonight in the Peach Bowl, will be in the quarterback room for the Jets in 2026. So that game's worth watching. We talked a bit about that game in the first segment and what to watch for. But of course, the Jets are likely to bring in a veteran this offseason. And when you draft a quarterback, it's standard operating procedure to bring in a veteran who's a mentor. Now, the Jets did not do that with Zach Wilson in 2021. And Robert Saleh has since admitted that that was a mistake. But, you go back in time. In 2018, the Jets had Josh McCown to help out Sam Darnold. And Darnold claimed that McCown helped him a lot. I mean, I don't know if the results really justify that, but Darnold did say that McCown helped him an awful lot. And McCown ended up being Sam's quarterback's coach last year in Minnesota when he had his breakout season. So I don't know, maybe he did. Maybe it was just the surroundings with the Jets. In 2013, the Jets did bring in David Garrard to help out with Geno Smith. I'm not sure the Jets necessarily thought they were going to draft Geno heading into the 2013 draft because they waited until the second round. They actually passed on him with both the 9th pick and the 13th pick. But the Jets did have David Garrard, who was kind of around. Garrard was signed in the offseason, then retired during the offseason, then returned. It was an odd situation, but it's standard operating procedure to bring in a veteran type quarterback. Now, there are a couple of options out there if the Jets did not want to draft Moore or Mendoza. They're not great options. I think the name everyone's focused on right now is Malik Willis, who's been the Packers backup. You may remember him as an early round pick of the Tennessee Titans a few years ago. Did not do very well there. Got traded to Green Bay. He's been working with Matt LaFleur and stepped up when Jordan Love got a concussion and played pretty good football. I have to say, I was really impressed by the way Malik Willis played. I would lean away from Malik Willis, though. I think there's a good chance he's looking at a fairly lucrative contract because he's played so well, when called upon. He played two pretty good games, including a Saturday night game in Chicago, which Green Bay should have won. I mean, Green Bay didn't win. It was because of crazy things happening, like a game-ending sack getting wiped off on a face mask, not recovering an onside kick. I mean, it was just unbelievable, the stuff that happened for Chicago to win that game. And had Green Bay held on, Willis would have been one of the heroes coming in relief of Jordan Love and playing really well. But my concern with Willis is that it's one thing to play well for a week or two as a backup quarterback in a system that you are familiar with, in a system where you've been working for a couple of years. It's another thing to come to a team that doesn't have a lot of talent with the Jets. And look, we hope the talent level will be upgraded this offseason. But it's a team that at this point is not going to be completely built in one offseason, and a system that's not really conducive to your talents. And when I was watching that Saturday night game between Green Bay and Chicago, and by the way, we have a rematch in the wild card round. One of the things that impressed me about Matt LaFleur is how he adjusted his play calling on the fly. The Jordan Love offense kind of ceased to exist in Green Bay once Willis went into that game. You saw a lot of, quarterback runs. You saw a lot of simple reads. You saw the Packers relying on the run game. And to the extent they threw the ball, I mean, they were simple plays. They were deep shots that Willis could hit. They didn't ask Willis to stand in the pocket and make a ton of complex reads. When I was watching that game, I said, that's the offense the Jets should have tried with Justin Fields. So I have some concerns that the Jets could sign Malik Willis this offseason. And if they do, that we would see the same stuff happen as happened with Justin Fields, where they didn't put in an offense that he could run. Because if you couldn't assign Willis, you needed an offense that's adapted. There are a couple of other options that would be potential salary dumps. I mean, there's rumors Kyler Murray could be on the outs in Arizona. And I think that'll come down to what the new coach in Arizona wants in part. He has a terrible contract. I would not touch Kyler Murray unless either he got cut and was willing to sign a cheap deal, or if the Cardinals were willing to do a deal kind of like I don't know if you remember the Texans did with the Browns for Brock Osweiler, where the Texans essentially gave the Browns a second-round pick to take Brock Osweiler's terrible contract off the books. Look, if they do that, if the Cardinals are willing to send an early pick for the Jets to use their cap space to eat Kyler Murray's contract, I'd be happy to do that. Murray, I have a lot of the same issues, and it's because, he's kind of small. You have to he's another guy you have to modify your offense for because he's kind of short, which means he has trouble seeing over the line of scrimmage. And, you can succeed as a shorter quarterback in the NFL, but you have to be able to figure out a way to work around the offensive line. You have to figure out a way to be able to see over the offensive line. Drew Brees was kind of short in New Orleans, but the Saints did a couple things. First of all, they always invested heavily at the guard position because they knew they needed to give Brees a really clean pocket. They needed to have guards who could hold up so that Brees could have good depth perception. Because you don't want, if you're shorter, it's tougher to see when your guards are getting pushed into your face. If your guards are holding their own at the line of scrimmage, you have more depth perception, you have more ability to see. And Brees was also the master of kind of just a little subtle slide, a half step to see between the gaps, seeing the gaps between linemen. Or you look at Russell Wilson, another guy who was kind of shorter. In Seattle, what made him so special was his ability to just break the pocket and make plays outside the pocket. And when you saw his mobility decrease near the end of his time in Seattle, and you saw it again, it just got worse as he went to Denver, then with Pittsburgh, then with the Giants. It's not an accident that Russell Wilson's decline happened so fast because he's lost his mobility all at once. And once he lost that mobility, his advantage in not needing to see over the line over the blockers, was there. Another salary dump option could be Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, I don't even know why you'd help Miami out with that. Again, that's a guy who if Miami sent a premium pick to get rid of him, I might do it, but I don't think you want to touch him. And then after that, we get into the realm of the veteran who's trying to hold on, the veteran placeholder. I mean, do you want to go Kirk Cousins? A lot of Jets fans have bad feelings for Kirk Cousins because in 2018, he was a free agent. He was actually the biggest free agent available in that class. The Jets needed a quarterback and they had genuine interest. And Cousins kind of did this documentary where he made it clear that he was using the Jets as leverage. He was essentially using the Jets offer to squeeze more money out of Minnesota, which was the team he always wanted. So lots of bad feelings about Kirk Cousins. He's near the end of his career. I mean, he played a little bit better for Atlanta near the end, down the stretch, but I mean, I don't think that's a very exciting option. One option, if you're interested in Dante Moore, though, who very well could be on the table, would be Marcus Mariota, who's Washington's backup quarterback. And the reason it could be an option is he went to Oregon like Dante Moore. And because the two of them have that Oregon connection, there actually is a pre-existing relationship there. If you're looking for a mentor who Moore already knows and already respects, and you're looking for a relationship that's already built, that could be your option because Mariota is a guy who can play credible football. He'll never live up to the hopes that the Titans had when they drafted him second overall in 2015, but a guy who's kind of settled into being a quality backup, guy who's not going to win you a lot of games, but isn't going to make the big mistake. And he could be an ideal mentor for Moore if the Jets drafted him. And then I think I'd be remiss without mentioning our old friend Joe Flacco, who, I spent a lot of time during the early years of this podcast essentially saying Flacco is finished, and his renaissance over the last couple of years has been something to be impressed by. Flacco has done a heck of a job the last couple of years. He seems ageless, and which is amazing because he had a 7-year stretch where he just seemed completely finished. Now he looks like a starting caliber quarterback again. I don't think you'd bring in Flacco unless you drafted a quarterback, but that's another guy. Maybe he's someone you look to as a veteran mentor. But as you can see, there aren't really a lot of great options available in the veteran market for the Jets. Will this make it more likely they draft a quarterback? Perhaps. But, I think that if we're trying to fill the quarterback position, it's really going to be tough to do when we're talking about veterans. And, there's always possible there's a trade candidate who enters the equation. Back in 2013, the Kansas City Chiefs, this was Andy Reid's first year in Kansas City. They had the number 1 overall pick, and everybody thought they'd draft a quarterback, maybe Geno Smith. And the Chiefs ended up trading for Alex Smith. And it wasn't entirely clear at that point that Alex Smith would be traded, but they were able to find a solid veteran. I mean, if there's a solid veteran option that becomes available, maybe it interests the Jets. But, at least right now, unless there's a surprise candidate, it's looking pretty slim at the quarterback position in terms of veterans. Anyway, that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoy the show and are listening on a podcast source, give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next time to talk more